things off and have a look at what...
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation.
But tell me something. Why did you leave? I know your term was coming to an end and you possibly could have had another one, but what was your decision based on?
Yeah, I think that the 5-year term was fixed, so I was not reelected. But I think it's normal for that board member in Japan.
What was life on the board of the Bank of Japan board like under Governor Kuroda like?
Of course, each member is independent, so there's no obligations to support his view. So each member has their own idea and vote based on their own ideas. So in my case, I think that I couldn't accept his view. That is the reason why that I have kept a minority stance for a very long time. But I think that I think this kind of minority view could contributing to that discussion or that how to say constructive discussion among the board. So in this sense, I have made a great contribution to that monetary policy decision process.
So it was one where it was a board of a healthy debate going on. Did you ever get the feeling that the governor really took on board your points or glossed them over?
Yeah, but I think he has his views, so he was cautious, basically cautious to accept that minority view, and also that other members basically support a very aggressive easy monetary policies. So that's the reason why that I couldn't change that direction of that policy during my term. But the important point is, I think that very aggressive policy is combined, cause that many serious side effects. So I hope that other members should consider that possible risk that the side effect may increase in the future, and that could undermine the stability of the economy and financial market in Japan.
Mr. Kiuchi, I want to ask you a question about possible side effects. At the same time, I would also like to, as I finish this question, call up a Bloomberg chart, which is hashtag 3118, because in the time I've been traveling to Tokyo this year and talking to people, and actually a number of people who have left the Bank of Japan, it seems like one of the big concerns they express is that if the Bank of Japan stays on this path of bond buying, especially now that it has to maintain yield curve control, at some point it will be buying all the bonds that the Japanese government issues, that in fact that could completely undermine the very existence of the Japanese government bond market if there's no secondary market to trade anymore. Is that the kind of risk you're talking about?
Yes, that is one of the big risk or side effect I imagine regarding to that current monetary policy. So I believe that BOJ cannot continue to purchase government bond for JGB, government bond forever. So although that the BOJ has reduced that the amount of pace of the amount of purchase from 80 trillion yen in annualized rate last year to 60 trillion yen. So I think that this kind of reduction of the pace of the purchase is contributing to that how the sustainability and stability of that yield curve controlling. But I think that this reduction is not enough. So in my personal calculation, if the BOJ continue to purchase that the JGB at 60 annualized rate, I think that the BOJ's purchase can reach that limit sometimes around the middle of the next year, because that. It's not likely that private financial institutions will diminish that the holding of JGB completely. I think that in this sense, I think that there is a time of that limitation is approaching, and I think that the BOJ have to change that monetary policy to reduce that amount of purchase of JGB further. And to do this, I think that lift of yield curve controlling is necessary because as far as that BOJ keep that yield curve controlling, if that long-term yield may, receive that upward pressure from that outside factors, maybe BOJ have to purchase more JGB to protect that target. So in that point, I think that the limitation of that JGB purchase may comes earlier than that the middle of the next year. That's my very serious concern.
Has the Bank of Japan sort of created a situation now that it can't get out of? I guess the old American expression would be, painted themselves into a corner. Because now the bond market expects the Bank of Japan to buy JGBs to keep the 10-year yield at zero. If they reduce their purchases, if they stop buying them, then presumably that yield will rise. Will that boost the yen? The yield differentials will get wider or shrink. Is that one of the reasons why they find it difficult then to get out of this policy?
Yeah, I think that anyway that the BOJ have to reduce the purchase of JGB in the futures to keep the stability of that financial market, and that is also that the key factors of stability of that economy. But I think that some kind of turbulence could be a catalyst which may change that BOJ's monetary policy for that more better directions. For example, that further decline of liquidity of JGB could eventually lead to that higher volatility of JGB market in the future. That could be maybe caused by that big change of economy and financial conditions in the world. In that sense, I think that that could hopefully change that the BOJ's policy and decided to reduce more the amount of purchase of JGB. But to realize this policy, to realize this change of the policy, maybe BOJ needs to abolish that yield curve controlling policy.
Koichi-san, let's look to the future now. Will this 2% inflation target set by the BOJ ever be achieved in the next 5 years, in your view? And what are the chances of it actually being achieved in the next 10 years?
I think that the 2% inflation goal is maybe unachievable in the foreseeable future. And I think that the 2% inflation rate target is not achievable and also appropriate either. Because that, in my idea, that the trend of that inflation rate is determined by that potentiality of economic expansion. Now that maybe economic growth prospect is very poor in Japan, for example, that the potential growth rate could be lower than 1%. Under that condition, maybe high inflation rate is not sustainable. For example, that when that growth expectation is low for companies try to reduce that wages for particularly full-time workers. So this kind of wage policies could lead to that lower long-term inflation expectation for the consumers. So under that condition, I think that, for example, retailers were reluctant to increase that price of that goods. In this way, I think that the potentiality of the economy could be a main determinant factors of trend of the inflation rate. So if that potentiality of the economy may increase in Japan, in that case, I think that the 2% inflation goal could be appropriate. But I cannot imagine that this kind of change of that structure of economy may take place in the foreseeable future. In this sense, I think that the 2% inflation goal is not appropriate. And if that the BOJ could increase that the prices, for example, through yen depreciation, so that could undermine that consumer activity because that companies are reluctant to increase the wages. Maybe increase of that the acceleration of the inflation rate caused by that aggressive easing monetary policy could undermine that real income condition for consumers. That could undermine that quality of life. In this sense, I think that maybe BOJ should change that the status of 2% inflation goal in the future. And the change of that 2% inflation goal status could lead to that normalization of the monetary policy.
Okay. However, you know, part of the conversation around the target and around what the Bank of Japan is doing links to fiscal policy and links to the very large debt to GDP ratio that Japan has now. And some have made a pretty direct link between what the Bank of Japan is doing through the bond purchases to and the yield curve control to try to start, you know, creating more growth, you know, more inflation, and basically help reduce the burden of that debt. Inflation helps to sort of inflate away the value of that debt. And some have made that link very clearly that this is, whether that's Mr. Kuroda's main goal, he would say it's to boost the economy, boost inflation. Others say this is a key element of this policy, and it's a very important one, and that's why the Bank of Japan should continue. Why don't you agree with that?
I think that the acceleration of the potential growth rate and also that some change of tax policy could be a main important tool to, reduce the government debt in the future. And I think that the BOJ, central bank, should not be involved in this process. So of course that many people believe that as far as that the BOJ is taking these very aggressive policies, maybe that could help that reduction of that debt or of the government, but I think that that is not correct. And maybe BOJ's aggressive monetary policy cannot have a positive impact to that potential growth rate. That's the key of that restoring that healthiness of fiscal policy. And if that the BOJ keep that very low interest rate, that could lead to that maybe accumulation of that financial imbalance, so-called bubble. And maybe blast of the bubble could cause that big damage to that economy, and that could undermine that fiscal condition.
Do you think his policies have any chance of working?
I'm suspicious. I think that yield curve controlling has a very big problem. And also that very low interest rate policy could potentially undermine that financial intermediation function of financial institutions. That could, in the long term, could undermine that economy and the potential growth rate. So I believe that BOJ should start that kind of normalization process. That could maybe reduce that risk of many side effects in the future. That could be a very important maybe assignment for the BOJ. Even if that the BOJ wants to accelerate that easy monetary policy, I think that it's difficult to find that any effective monetary policy measures to stimulate the economy now.
What about Prime Minister Abe? What about the federal government? Limitations of monetary policy, is that what has to be done to boost growth and naturally boost inflation, taking steps beyond monetary policy? And will that happen in Japan?
Yeah, I believe that the so-called third arrow could be very important. That is a structural reform. So as I said, I think that for the ordinary people to increase that quality of life, maybe acceleration of that productivity growth rate or potential growth rate could be necessary. But the monetary policy cannot be involved in this project. Of course, that could be promoted by that private companies and supported by that government high growth strategy. So I think that I hope that the government should accelerate that this kind of structural reform that could maybe lead to that acceleration of that growth rate. And if that kind of policy could be reliable, a company may lift up that growth rate forecast in the future.
Kiuchi-san, in 5 seconds, yes or no, would you support Governor Kuroda for a second term? Yes or no?
Sorry, I'm cautious to make answer.